bearing in mind, go wild appropriately. Okay. So yeah, it's usually when I have interviews with girls, I'm like, girls gone wild, but appropriately. So yeah, that's what I tell everybody. So yeah, we've been live in this conversation. The end of it was live. So hello everybody. Hope all of you guys are doing well. So I'm just gonna take a moment to make this public. So all of you guys, when you guys share out all of your friends and family, even if they are not my Facebook friends, can see this. And I think that'll be amazing. Yeah, so today we have a very special guest. I was actually like very much waiting for the interview because I'm really curious about project-based learning. And I think I get to feed my curiosity here. Oh yeah, it's public now. It's public. So hello everybody. Hope all of you guys are doing well. I am doing well, just so you know. I'd love if you can share this interview out. So this would be on your walls, timelines, whatever you want to call it, to your friends and families and enemies and frenemies, whoever you basically just have friended on Facebook, can see this. And I think that would be great. So you can publicly post this. And even if you want to do that later and watch right now, you can start a watch party later. So make sure that you do that, okay? And you can comment as well about your thoughts. I don't mind any sort of comments. Just take it away, okay? Hello, how are you doing?
Very well, thank you, Rahim. It's great to be here.
So can you please introduce yourself so that we can kickstart this interview and dive into the conversation?
All right, I'm Thom Markham. I am from California and live in California at the moment. That's where I'm speaking from now. Um, I am an educator, a teacher, a bit of a rabble rouser, and someone who has been deeply involved with project-based learning for the past 20 years and involved with what I call educational transformation across many countries. I've worked in probably 20 different countries. Uh, and I have a very global and international view of how we are trying to come together to change education for young people.
That is amazing. And so I feel like I have a lot of views about education. Everybody does. So I feel like because I've been interviewing many people from the education sector and their educators. So I feel like I'd be able to maybe give some little insight, you know. Okay, so let's get started from like the beginning. So do you want to share where you were born and how were like your early days in the world?
I've had a very strange and long journey in life, Rahim. I am 78 years old, and it's been a long time coming. I started out uh, actually, I grew up in a very interesting household, a household that would be actually better understood in places like Pakistan and India than they are in the US. I grew up in a very spiritual, metaphysical household with a lot of Indian authors on the bookshelf of my mother, who I eventually read all those books. So I grew up with a very kind of a very broad worldview and a view that we need to contribute to the development globally of people. So that was my orientation from a very young age. And from there, I actually undertook many different adventures. I spent 8 years writing a book on ancient Egypt in a cabin in the woods. I became very interested in sort of ancient world history. I then migrated to education somewhat in the middle of my life rather than starting it out as a career. And I I can't exactly tell you why I made that choice, except I always respond to intuition and I respond to that little voice inside us that tells us where we should go and how we should do it. So I responded to that voice and I got into education. I was a teacher for about 9 years. I enjoyed teaching, but I actually found that teaching alone was not really what I wanted to do. I really wanted to reinvent how we educate young people. And I had a very, very strong sense that instead of helping them achieve their maximum potential or finding their voice in life, we were actually doing a lot of things in the educational system that prevented that. And we actually were working at cross purposes, even though we say that we want to help young people develop themselves. Much of our school system, regardless of which country you're in, is actually ends up being somewhat limiting rather than unlimiting. So I discovered a way to work my way through that dilemma when I discovered project-based learning, because project-based learning was something that was becoming popular in schools even 20 years ago, and then has become increasingly popular in the present time. And project-based learning is very interesting because it is a way of covering the curriculum or teaching. It actually meets the requirements for school, but it does it in a way that is not just lecturing, which can be not only boring, but not very effective as a way to get information. So project-based learning is about students doing and becoming actively involved in their own investigation. And something that we can talk a little bit about as we proceed through the interview. Project-based learning is not really an educational method. It is a human development method, which I can say more about, which is probably why it has really attracted me.
Yeah, amazing. Now tell me, how were your, educational, the time that you went to, middle school, or, the time that you went to high school, how were those for you? And at that time, how was learning for you?
Well, remember my age. When I went to school, people didn't question. They just went through the motions. So I went through all the motions and I found it rather enjoyable. I was actually a good student, enjoyed school. I was not one of those students who was uh, what I would say so intense and focused that I didn't have other interests. So I was never I have to get an A student or I have to get the highest marks in order to get into the best university. That didn't drive me. What drove me was doing well enough in school to give me enough choices to do what I wanted to do, but to find other ways to sort of enjoy myself as well. So I did end up going to a very good university, University of California at Berkeley. I thought I might be a doctor. So I majored in zoology, so I have a lot of science background. But then as I moved through university around the third or fourth year, I realized that really wasn't what I wanted to do. That was really something that I had thought I would want to do because it was a conventional path. So then I realized that was not what I wanted to do. So I switched to history and political science and government and got a graduate degree. And then I really went through a life-altering experience. I joined the US Peace Corps, and I spent 2 years on the east coast of Malaysia teaching English in an English language Malaysian school. And if you know anything about Malaysia, it's extremely diverse culturally. So Malay, Chinese, Indians, and I got a good exposure to Asian cultures and a really good sense of what it was like to live outside my California bubble, which is kind of a bubble if you grow up. I grew up on the beaches of Southern California, surfing, and it's a very nice life, but it's a sheltered life in terms of how the world operates. So I was able to receive more education that way. And then I came back and did a variety of jobs, ended up writing this book on ancient Egypt, went back into teaching, as I said, but then later in life, I also get a PhD in psychology. So I'm very interested in human performance and how people perform and what makes them perform well or what makes them happy. There's lots of different sides to psychology. So I'm not so much of a psychological scientist. I'm more of a humanist behaviorist kind of psychologist. So that's been a big part of my educational journey.
We're back now.
Did you get most of that, Raheem?
No, I didn't. It's just like, at some point there's like little bits of voices that I could hear from your side, and then it just kind of like blanked out. It was my internet, by the way.
Okay, do you want me to start over?
Would you want to do that? Are you comfortable with that?
Yeah, I'll just tell you a little bit about what I just said, just to make sure that everybody who's watching the broadcast can get that. I went through, and you were asking me about education, how I got educated, my learning, and my early learning was quite conventional. I went through, typical grade school, and I enjoyed it. I was never a problem child, and teachers liked me, and I got along with teachers, and it was all worked out very well. High school was somewhat the same way. And in those days, it was not quite so competitive. So I was a good student, as I said, but I wasn't one of those students who had to get the highest marks in order to get to I wasn't driven. But I did go to a good school. I went to University of California, Berkeley, and thought I'd be a doctor. And so I became a zoology major, and I majored in zoology. So I had a lot of science, which has actually been good for me. I've enjoyed that. But I discovered sort of late in my university career that being a doctor was not what I wanted to do. So I really discovered I like writing, I like thinking, I like more of the humanistic side of things. And so I got a degree in government, political science, history. And then I went in the Peace Corps, which is in those days, you could join the Peace Corps, U.S. government, and go overseas. And I lived 2 years on the east coast of Malaysia, and on the South China Sea, in a village of about 20,000 people, and all Asians. So I got my first exposure to living in a different kind of culture from what I had grown up with in California. And so that was a very big learning and exposure for me, and really an important event, because it really just allowed me to see the world in a much broader way. It was good for my own development. And then when I came back from that, after a couple of years, I was sort of a different person, a changed person. So the way an experience can do that. And so that was in my mid-20s. And that's when I went up to write the book on ancient Egypt. So I was exploring things and exploring ideas. And then when I came back to education, to become a teacher, about 4 or 5 years later, I actually got a PhD in psychology. And so I have had my degree in psychology is about human performance, human development. And that's when I began to merge the human development with education. And that's where project-based learning came in, because project-based learning, as I say, is a way to develop people, not just to teach the things of school. And so that's been a very powerful motivator for me. It's also been a good way for me to get in and talk to teachers, because if you just say to teachers or to educators, I want to come in and develop people, they don't really have time for you because they're more interested in curriculum. So I was able to sort of slip in under project-based learning and talk about people that way. And that's worked very well for me. So that's where I was educationally, and that's sort of what I've been doing for the past 20 years, is working with teachers all over. I've probably worked with 400 schools, 6,000 teachers. I've been in like 20 countries working with teachers, including in Pakistan, with Beacon House schools. So I've had some opportunity there to talk to Pakistani teachers. So so that's what I've been doing. And it's always been sort of one focus, Raheen. It's always about how do we develop young people? Or that's not even the good way to say it. How do we set up the right conditions so they can develop themselves in the way they want to develop? So that's my life mission. And I still have some things in the works I'm doing now that are moving in that same direction.
Yeah, so basically it's all about creating such a pleasant yet productive, environment for young people to just grow and thrive and also do openly what they want to do. So yeah, that is something that I'm working towards as well. So we have somehow a very common goal of our life, and that is amazing. So now tell me one thing. With your experience with education, and before becoming a teacher, then an educator, and then really just focusing on project-based learning, what was your view about what were your views about education? How did you think of education before you started teaching and educating yourself?
Well, I knew what the system of education looked like because I grew up in it and I was educated through it. And what I realized is that when I became a teacher, I was fortunate enough to position myself so that I was working directly with students, really on their own growth and human development, the kinds of classes that I had. So that was satisfying to me, and that worked. But I realized that the broader structure of school is really designed essentially for adults to tell students what they need to know, rather than listening to the voices of young people. Now, we could talk about that because there's a certain value in having adults teach you things. So, we have to realize that it's not that even if you're 13, you don't know as much about the world as you're going to know, and you're going to deal with some adults who are going to know more, and you want to use them as mentors and guides and draw from them. But what I wanted to work towards and have worked towards for 20 years is designing a system that is much more friendly to student interests and much more aimed at developing them as people who can then decide what they need to learn or want to learn, rather than deciding for them what they have to learn. That, to me, is what's important. And so that's really been part of my goal. And more recently, I'm working on books that are a little more even ambitious, talking about really changing what we believe about human capability and sort of expanding that notion in general. So I am, as I said at the beginning, a bit of a rebel. I don't really actually believe most of the things that many teachers believe, but I do have a deep respect for sort of young people and what they need.
So you're kind of like the cool teacher of the class. I mean, just
Yeah,
saying.
I'm like a stealth teacher.
Tell me something. I feel like always now I am part of, the education system. And I see many things that I feel like should change. What is one thing that you feel should be and can be changed for better in the system right now?
Well, I would say the main thing from my standpoint is that our entire curriculum, again, it doesn't matter what country you're going through, it's the same system everywhere, same materials, same curriculum. The curriculum is too dense and too heavy and too many things without enough choice. So one thing I would change is I would make the curriculum much smaller, with much more choice and much more personalized, rather than to have a set exams, curriculum every year, go the next year. It's too rigid. It's an industrial mindset. It's an industrial structure. And we've moved into a much different era now, where someone your age has access to all the same information that I have. Well, that makes a big difference, because that means you don't necessarily have to distinguish between somebody who's 13 and 30, because the 13-year-old may know more than the 30-year-old in certain areas. And so that changes the relationship between students and teachers and the curriculum and what they want to do. And it all pushes in the direction of more personalized choices with the guidance of an adult. I actually prefer to call teachers either facilitators or coaches, or where I think we're really aiming toward is really being what I call co-learners, working together as adults and young people. And then the question becomes working towards what? And that's really where my interests lie, because what we have to work toward is a world in which everybody can thrive, not just survive. I think we're very much at the edge of a real challenge. And increasingly, we have to stop thinking about, well, can I get just a degree in engineering so I can get a perfect job and make a living? That's sort of important, but we better figure out what my engineering skills are designed for. Are they designed to support growth, change, thriving? Do they support sustainable development goals? Those kinds of issues more and more come up, in which we really have to, from my standpoint, there's 1.3 billion young people under the age of 18. That's a big talent pool. My thought is, let's get them rolling, give them the opportunity to solve problems, turn them loose on their communities, give them the skills they need, and start designing solutions, whether it's homelessness or it's an open sewer next to your house, whatever it is. Let's start working on those, or whether it's climate change and larger issues. So that's my ideal.
That is amazing. I feel like providing opportunities is important. And I feel like nowadays people are really just starting to do that. But there should be people that are ready and yet also equipped with the right skills to avail those opportunities. I mean, there's a lot of opportunities that come my way because I feel like I have developed those skills. Now tell me, not all the time, and many guests on my show, they tell this to me as well, and they share that school does not really prepare you for life. Does it tell you what you need? And I have a very good friend, Kurt Kruger. He actually taught at some point young, children like I don't know, like kindergarten kids, anger management, because that would help them, later in school and both in life. Because I feel like those things are important in decision making, because many times we're like, I know, like 105 years old, but we still are not so certain when it comes to our decisions. So what do you have to say about that?
Well, there has always been a slight mismatch between what you learned in school and how you were prepared for the world. But the mismatch didn't really matter that much up until 10 or 20 years ago. Now it matters more because, as I say, everybody has access to the same information, and also because it's a much more of a world that depends on what you're capable of doing rather than just your certificate of what you know or your college degree or your university degree. So it's really based on being able to do things. And so many companies, and I'm sure this is true in Pakistan as well as the US, they feel like they get graduates from very nice universities with their bachelor's degree, but they're not really capable of working until they've gone through training. So more and more schools are trying to contend with that by, first of all, internships or real world projects. And that's the beauty of project-based learning, is that project-based learning is exactly the same method that most people use when they're out in the workforce. They have a project, they have a challenge, they have a thing that they have to do. They're working with others, they're working in a team, they come up with solutions. That's what project-based learning is. So project-based learning is actually a career builder, not just a curriculum tool. And so it's really a way for young people to practice collaboration, which is the number one skill that everyone's looking for, to practice deeper forms of collaboration like empathy, working with different kinds of people, problem solving, kind of being agile thinker, trying to figure out things, trying to come up with solutions, presenting their solutions publicly. That's what project-based learning is. So It's really, from my standpoint, the perfect way to actually prepare for the world. And project-based learning isn't restricted to any one subject or topic. You can use it, it's a problem-solving method, and you can use it for any subject or anything. So teachers who are doing project-based learning well are really preparing uh, their students to be more competent in the world. And I've had many students come back and tell me that. They tell me, now that I did all those projects, when I go to university and I no longer have a teacher who's telling me what to do every moment, and I have to learn to do it myself, project-based learning was perfect for preparing myself to do that. And I see my friends who didn't have that kind of learning in their schooling, in their secondary schooling, they don't know what to do, and they've never had to practice making choices when they've had the freedom to make choices. And you need a little practice in that in life. And so that's what project-based learning is very good at doing.
Amazing. Now, tell me something, and to all the people in the audience, because I'm sure there must be one person, at least in the audience, that does not know how project-based learning works. Is it from the students? Is it from the teachers? So, would you want to share that with our audience?
Yeah, it's a big topic actually. I'll try to simplify it as much as I can. First of all, project-based learning is a very simple, at the base of it, a very simple problem-solving method. And that is you set up a challenge and a problem to be solved. That's called a driving question in PBL and project-based learning, PBL. And that's called setting up the problem or the challenge. And that challenge has to be something that is meaningful to students, or as they say, authentic. So it can't be, how do I solve this quadratic formula? That's not going to do it. It has to be, how can we solve this meaningful, authentic problem? Then students work together and they come up with solutions. The teacher also has a hand in offering material or knowledge that will be useful. There's a blend of inquiry and instruction. And then the students work through the problem, and at the end, they come up with a solution and present that solution to an audience publicly in some way, not just to their teacher. So it's really a simple process of solving a problem-solving process. It usually takes, normally 2 to 4 weeks for a project. Um, and it's has a lot of tricky parts for it for a teacher, because let's say the students are working in teams. Well, students don't automatically work in teams. Neither do adults, by the way, but students particularly, uh, you're of an age, you've seen what it's like. Not all your classmates are able to work in a team together without thinking about what are they going to do on Friday night, or what's the latest post on Facebook. To get people to focus on a problem is like, yeah, you got to work at that. That requires a little of adult coaching and mentoring and feedback and practice. And so PBL is a way to do that. But as I said, it's not, as you pose a problem or a challenge to a group of students, which, by the way, can originate with the students, or can originate with the teacher, or can originate in a class discussion between teacher and students. All three ways are good ways to come up with the problem. The important thing is not just to impose a problem on students, but to know that it's meaningful and relevant to their interests, and it will give them a reason to get engaged in the process of solving the problem. And when they get engaged in that process of solving the problem in a project, if the challenge is meaningful enough, then they really have to think deeply and they really have to work hard at it. And that's where you develop your skills and attitudes and strengths. That's why I call it a human development method. It's not just an academic development method. It's about helping young people become skilled and able to engage problems in a more authentic way, to give them practice in engaging in the problems that they will face as they become adults.
That is amazing. There's this expression that I have that only like a very few people that met me, they know. It's like, oh me Lord, and I'm so happy. So in my heart, I was like, oh my Lord, this is so amazing. because these are the kind of, I feel like, things that should be happening in the, academic industry sector, whatever you want to call it, because this would both be, academically, good, and also would be, more of, when it comes to human development, that is just amazing, right? It develops the skills, you as a human being. And I feel like just teamwork that is needed in offices and businesses and, well, anything that you're basically running, when you grow up, or any way of earning money, you need teamwork to be there. So I feel like leadership skills and teamwork and so many things just come by this. Now tell me one mesmerizing experience that you might have when you just started out with PBL.
Well, when I first started doing project-based learning, I sort of intuitively knew that it would work. I knew enough about what people like to do and what they enjoy, and I've always been very close to students. So I was the only teacher in my high school that was called by. So I have an easy relationship with students, and I enjoy them. And the first thing is, if you're going to be a teacher and a successful teacher, particularly a project-based learning teacher, you better actually like teenagers or young people. And there's some teachers who don't. They actually don't like children. They just want to teach. So I really like the process of watching young people as their life unfolds, with all the problems and chaos that brings, by the way. So, you can be very idealistic about this, but if you happen to be facing a 14-year-old boy who's snarling in your face, that's not as easy to be empathetic. So it takes empathy, and you have to really just say, okay, this is what they're going through at the moment. That's fine. How do I help them take the next positive step? So I like that process, and I enjoy that process of watching people unfold. Project-based learning, the reason I have enjoyed it so much from the very beginning is because I could see the joy of that unfoldment when they completed projects. And I could see the joy of mastering something difficult, the joy of working with others, the joy of solving a problem, just the joy of having the freedom to attack or solve or work with an issue that was meaningful. So I call it brightness. So at the end of great projects, you see a certain glow. So that's my standard for good education. Are we seeing a glow in young people's faces? And the glow is noticeable, by the way, if you just have the eyes to see.
True. And when you give the example, I feel like there's many examples when you're like dealing with teenagers. We both know what we're talking about. There's people that you really have to deal with, and I think you really need to love teenagers in order to do that. But I feel like high school, all in all, is just like a very memorable time of your life, and the kind of time that really influences in all the years that you have yet to come, from high school sweethearts to, what you've learned, to that rebel phase of your life. So everybody, I feel like, in high school or in the class is going through certain phases of their life. And that is just beautiful to see and very annoying to see. Depends on what perspectives you have. So yeah. Now you told me that you had some questions for me. I'd love if you can just like ask me any questions that you like, and then I can answer them for you. So, yeah, it goes both ways.
Well, I think I can see from your responses that I'm on the right track in terms of liberating young people's talents and giving them opportunities to do more things. So I want to ask you, one of the great gaps I see, actually the greatest gap I see, is that we do not have a mechanism beyond efforts like yours right now to unify young people around the planet. We have 1.3 billion. I would love to see an alliance. I would love to see more opportunities for young people to connect and across every country, and to realize that they have so many common interests and a common desire to change the world. So my question to you is, how do you think we should do that?
Oh my God. I don't know why. It's like throughout this interview, I'm like, are we the same person? I love history. I had this history phase of my life as well. And then I also had this, I want to go to the zoo. I'm crazy for animals phase. And then I'm like, no. I had all these, phases in my life, 13 years old life. Um, and so I feel that I may be able to already say that I'm contributing to this is that I basically am the ambassador for International Children's World and International Children's Month, both of them, and they both work for the love, care, and respect of children that would lead to peace. So basically, what I do is that I run groups around and we talk about peace, we talk about the love, care, and respect of children, how important children are, and then once a month, which about the event is actually about to come up, we do this day of action where we have a lot of events lined up and a lot of young people from around the world, different nationalities, different interests, but one common goal, and that is to promote the love, care, and respect of children and peace through the love, care, and respect of children. So yeah, that's those circles we have. And in right now, the conversation, we now have, circles like conversations between different, people, which a lot of people are young people about what they want to do in life, and then they find in common, and there's actually been some collaborations I heard. So yeah, these are things that I'm already doing, and I'm actually working for development of a youth platform where all youth can connect, except of Instagram, where people with a purpose of life can connect, and that can be shown.
Good, because that's exactly what I'm interested in, is something that is a platform for connecting beyond social connection like Facebook or something like that, or Instagram. What have you been doing lately? A platform for purpose. And I'll ask you another question. What do you think? I believe, and I'll test this belief with you, that the emerging curriculum in schools, as schools begin to change, and they are changing rapidly, by the way. Schools are, I don't know how it's looking in Pakistan, but there's changes, and there's a lot of changes in other countries. I think that partially the new curriculum is going to become the Sustainable Development Goals. Do you think that resonates with young people?
That does. It's so I don't know all the questions you're asking and the questions that I asked you. It's just like, oh my God, we're so similar. Um, So, I feel like that is true and that does resonate with young people because about 3 to 4 months back, I was in class and it was an online class, and it turns out that the topic for that day was the Sustainable Development Goal. And in some previous classes, when they were talking as to how UN initiatives and how people and social workers, they get to like right down to the grassroots level. And I told them how that happens because I'm part of such, programs, not by the UN. I'm not, that's something that I'm aiming for, but other organizations. And I offered in to teach a class instead of the teacher. And the teacher's like, okay, you teach the class. And I'm like, oh my God, it so happens to be, I have the PowerPoint. I have everything ready. We're so ready to go. So I opened it and I taught the entire class. So I had the lesson plan and I told them about what I was doing and what they could come in and do with me. So we did have, a possible collaboration. So they were so, they were literally inspired. And they were like, oh my God, so how does that happen? And then there's indicators, and then each one has that. So though it was class, but for the first time in my life, I think I felt that connection with people in my class through one thing that both inspired us, because it's usually the people my age, they wouldn't talk about, sitting here and talk about, PBL. They'd be watching Netflix, which I do as well. But I feel like we should be talking about something in common as well. And that was a beautiful thing that I now have in common. And we still have conversations. Oh my God, it was so nice. And I feel like if that is more incorporated in schools, that's better, because young people have amazing ideas. I studied entrepreneurship, and I'm an aspiring entrepreneur when I was 11 years old. So, and formally I started back then, I say. But my first ever venture was when I was 8 years old. And then it so happened to be, that I went on with like small, I don't know, like stalls and like lemonade stalls kind of things. But I count them as ventures because they were amazing. And I feel like because I had the idea, and I see many people around me, they do, and they want to advocate for things that are happening, and they want to advocate for the environment and for the climate, but it's just about getting the opportunity. And for somebody counting on you, I was lucky. People, a lot of people, they count on me when it's like their life depended on that event or that keynote speech that I was happening to be giving. But it went amazing. And at times I may have messed up a little, but they just kind of never minded that. So I think that's just beautiful that I got the opportunity, and now I am working on giving as many opportunities to all the other young people around me as possible.
Let me ask you something else, Rahim. Do you feel that the consciousness and awareness of young people globally is shifting in the direction of greater activism and more change?
That is so true. Now, see, I feel like though before Instagram and Facebook was, excuse me, so popular, there was activism, between the youth, of course. I mean, there were organizations and ambassadors for organization, but it would usually be that you had to travel for the conference or for the summit, and then you needed money for that, and then you needed sponsors for that. There were so many things that were happening now. But I feel like just an Instagram hashtag, just an Instagram, page or post, it can get you a lot of people inspired, or a lot of people joining, and a lot of people advocating. We see many, activists right now that are working towards one goal. So I feel like Instagram and Facebook, it's really helped when it came to, activism. So yeah, we are leading there, and I am so proud to say, and it's such a nice thing that right now I'm a lot on social media, and I'm also on LinkedIn, guys. By the way, that's where I met you as well. And I now, just got in touch with another organization, One Better World, and they gave me the opportunity to speak later this year with the 14th Dalai Lama. So it's amazing. I mean, they trusted me with that opportunity, and that I feel just intrigues me, because many people and many young activists are part of that. And it's just all in the mind, and it's all just about what you feel and what you believe in when it comes to youth activism.
Well, I'm going to take advantage of you, Raheen. I am writing a book, and the title of the book is called Open Heart, Whole Mind. And the subtitle of the book is Setting Young People Free to Decide the Fate of the Planet. And I'm going to ask you to write something on the back cover for that book.
Oh my God. See, you just trusted me with something that's special to you. See, that's how things are working. And I'm so glad that you asked me to do that. Oh my God, I'm so excited. Um, yeah. So I'm definitely gonna do that. Oh my God, I'm so like, in my head right now. So yeah, do you have any other questions for me that I may be able to answer? Because I want to say something at the end of this.
No, I think you've answered my questions. I appreciate that. I definitely appreciate your whole effort here. You're obviously a bit of an outlier for 13-year-olds, and you're doing a fantastic job on really connecting people. This is, to my mind, the next great wave of revolution, is young people stepping up and owning the future of the planet. So good for you.
Yes, and thank you so much for just saying that. It's like you made my day, although like my day is almost over, but you made the rest of my day. Uh, yeah. So, I would really love to say that all the young people, we all need to be inspired. And, we've got so many motivational videos, but now they're all cliched because they say the same thing. I mean, there's nothing, out of the box anymore, and we don't know how that is and is working right now. So I feel like we need to be inspirations for ourselves. And I'm pretty sure part of project-based learning is really just going out there and exploring and researching. So you can do that. I mean, I've researched on American school lunches. What can be more weird than that? Go ahead, research, talk more, and then you can get experts on your Instagram or experts on your Facebook. And I live it by example. Nothing goes wrong. Everybody replies, because even if you text me like a heartfelt note that comes from like the place, I would definitely give it a reply. So nobody or is the biggest celebrity of the world, everybody would give you a reply if you write an appropriate message. So you can start doing like this on your own, or you can, just go with the cliched motivational video. So I feel like be one for yourself, inspirational. So what do you have to say to that? And then I feel like I have 3 mini questions, and then we can end this interview.
Well, I'm hoping that I will be going beyond the traditional motivational videos. And I'll tell you why quickly, Raheen. It's because some things are happening that I think are very interesting. First of all, we are developing a global social consciousness, and there's evidence that we are creating a global mind space, which means we all have to access that. That's one of my approaches. That also requires a different view of the brain, which I don't subscribe to the typical. I think we have much more power than we think we do. And the third piece, which is on my mind, is how love connects us all and opens us up to each other and actually puts us in the middle of that process of creativity. So that's what I'm going for. So that's not your typical motivational videos. We can go beyond that. So I have some ideas on that. And when you get the book, you'll see that. And you can decide whether you want to endorse it or not.
Oh, I do already. After meeting you, I'm sure the book will be, well, near your amazingness, of course. I mean, nobody can match up to you, can they? See, I've got my way through conversations. Now tell me, answer these 3 mini questions. First, I would want to, ask you that if anybody would want to contact you for any, let's say, appropriate reason, how can they do so? Where are you most reachable?
Email Thom, Thom, at pblglobal.com. And pblglobal.com is my website. They can see a little bit more about me, but they also, Thom at PBL Global. That's fine. If you want to put that in the chat, they can contact me, and that works fine. And I don't know how many teachers watch your Facebook or you watch your interviews, but I have free courses for teachers in project-based learning online. And I actually have quite a number of Pakistani teachers enrolled, probably 200. And so they can take those courses free. And if they just if they just search out PBL Global online, they'll see that there.
Amazing. So actually my teachers watch my interviews. Isn't that amazing? So yeah, and I'm going to ask them to, look at this, and if they would want to, that'd be amazing. Come on. Isn't that so?
Got a lot of teachers, as I said, a lot of teachers from Pakistan and India also enrolled.
Amazing. And second question, when your book will be out, where can we find your book? Or if you have any other books that you'd like to, maybe give a link to or tell where we could get them, because honestly, I want to get your books.
When the new book will be out and how it will be available is still to be determined. I don't know that. But I did write a book about 3 years ago called Redefining Smart, Awakening Young People's Power to Reimagine Their Future. So Redefining Smart is on Amazon. Redefining Smart. It's a very good book, and it really talks about how to really move this movement into the educational system. My new book is a little bit beyond that. It's really aimed more at adults because it's the adult beliefs that are keeping young people back, not the beliefs of the young people. It's the adult structure. So I'm determined to help break that down with some new ideas for them. But Redefining Smart is a very good book for them to read if people want to read that. It's not really a youth book. So, you have to decide, but pass it along to your parents or pass it along to your teachers, whatever.
Amazing. Okay, yeah, definitely I'll do that. And the last question, what is the message that today you'd like to give out to all the people that are watching?
The message for today is twofold. One is the we face what I would call, it's a big word, evolutionary challenge. We have to step up our game in terms of how we're going to thrive individually, which is really determined how we're going to thrive as a whole. And that is really about really working more on all those things I call associated with the quadrant of love: appreciation, kindness, respect, connection, collaboration, all curiosity about one another, what I call cultural humility, which means knowing, not just knowing another culture, but absorbing the best of that culture.
Amazing. Thank you so much being here. And I think, this interview, I'm pretty sure to say that this is, one of the highlights of my life. That's how great it's been, honestly. So yeah, thank you so
Thank you,
much for
Raheem.
being here.
It's a pleasure. So let me know if I can do anything else. I really enjoyed it, and thank you for the opportunity.
Just stay back for a moment after the live video is ended. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching. I have a lot of comments, and I do read them later, so I'm going to respond to them later. And if you have any questions for the guest, I'm going to send it to you, or text it to you, or just mention it to you anyway. So
Very
yeah,
good.
thank you so much, and we are going to come, back with an amazing guest. I mean, let's just admit it, nobody's as amazing as you, but maybe with a lot, a little different amazingness. Okay, thank you so much. Goodbye.
Thank you.